Next speaker is Bar-Yoshafat, a former IDF combat soldier and an attorney and policy expert. He is not a general, he is a former combat soldier. So maybe he would give us his perspective. Thank you.
He's the one that the pressure is here.
Thank you very much. I just want to say I'm still a combat soldier, only in the Army Reserves, which I serve about 2 months a year. So I want to begin by saying, thank you. I want to begin by saying we all here agree that there's a need for rules of engagement. We don't believe in the sentence, the famous quote, "When the cannons roared, may the muses be silent." We all share the same values of human life. Let's put this aside for a second because we are already there. I'm going to speak less from the theoretical, deontological, utilitarian perspective and more from the way I see it, or as we say in Israel, tachlis. As a low-ranking commander, when I go in an operation, I get my rules of engagement per mission. Each mission has different needs and different dangers. Now, the way I see it, when I'm getting my orders, I have 3 goals that I wish to achieve in the following order. The first and the foremost important thing is to accomplish the mission, to succeed in the mission that was given to me. That was the number 1 thing I need to keep in my mind. The second thing, second to the accomplishing the mission, is making sure that all of my troops and myself return home safely. The third goal is to make sure that I have as minimum amount of collateral damage as possible. This is the order in my mind, and I also believe it's the correct order when I'm assigned with a mission. I would argue that sometimes the third goal can hurt not only the first goal of accomplishing the mission, but also the lives of my soldiers and myself. And I want to share a story to emphasize this point. During the Second Lebanon War, it was my first Army Reserves, we fought in a village in Lebanon called Rashef. I think at that time I was fired at from all different weapons that I'm familiar with, PK-47, anti-tank missiles, RPGs, grenades, artillery, you name it. And this was obviously after the IDF has sent flyers and said that we're going to come into this village. We know that you're firing rockets at Israel from this perimeter. And at a certain point, we noticed that we were being shot at from a mosque. Now, the orders at that time were you do not fire at holy places. So what you do is you take cover, and you call on the radio, and you're saying, we're being fired at from a mosque. Are we allowed to fire back? The answer was yes, only if you can spot the person standing there with a gun. Now, I'm going to open parentheses for a second. You have to understand that when you're a soldier and you're seeing someone shooting at you from a window, and it's nighttime, you don't always see exactly if it's from the window to the right or if it's from the window to the left, and usually you don't see a gun, you see flashes of light. That's what you see. So it's very hard to actually put your head and wait to see if you can see a person standing there with a gun, so that the orders will be, yes, you're allowed to shoot back. Unfortunately, we did get permission eventually to use accurate fire at the mosque. Unfortunately, it was, in my opinion, a bit too late. A soldier from the brigade that was fighting next to us was killed. And it was because it took a very long time to get the permission to fire back. By the way, today the orders have been changed. It's very often that we learn from combat that we need to sometimes change the orders, and there's like a golden rule. If someone is shooting at you, usually, and I'm going to come to why it's usually you're allowed to fire back. Another story just to emphasize this complexity. When I was in advanced training, my base was very close to an Arab school, and we got shot at from the school. What do? You know that the vast majority of the people in the school are children, and you don't know exactly from which window, and if you have kids that are standing next to you, usually do have children standing next to the person who is shooting at you. So at that time, we took cover. It's very unpleasant. You're being shot at, you're taking cover, and you're not returning fire. This story has a happier ending. I have no idea why, but the terrorist decided one day to shoot at nighttime, And we knew that there's no school at nighttime, and we fired back, and that worked better. But it doesn't always work like that. So when it comes to your judgment in the low-ranking levels, for me, for my soldiers, I can divide it into two. One is your judgment, basic judgment. Like I said, the golden rule, if someone is shooting at you, you have a right to protect yourself. The second is the rules themselves. You have a list, rules of engagement. You have different books. You have general rules of engagement for patrols, rules of engagement for wartime. Now, to continue on my former speaker, I would argue that the soldier is not stupid. Sometimes people say soldiers, no, they're not stupid. They're very, very smart. They're intelligent. But the problem is that you will always have more circumstances than rules. You will never have enough rules to match each and every sentence that you encounter. And something that we always forget is context, meaning. A soldier has a helmet on his head for hours. When you're walking with a helmet, it's harder to think. Second of all, you're carrying weight. I cannot think of anyone who entered Lebanon with less than 100 pounds on their backs. It's more difficult to think when you're doing that. Thirdly, there's adrenaline, you're walking, you're tired. And fourth, you're being shot at. And when you're being shot at, all of this theoretical debate is very nice, but it's very hard to actually follow. What you can follow is the automatic procedures that you were trained. And the automatic procedures that you were trained to do need to be simple, needs to be minimum. You cannot remember 50 different orders if someone is shooting at you, but they're shooting from a PK-47 and they're not, it's too much. It's too much. You need to know when you're supposed to react. Now, about the golden rule of usually when people are shooting at you, you should fire back. I'm saying usually. Why? Because the reality is that warfare is complex. It's much more complex than the theoretical discussions. It's very scary for me as a commander to think of the fact that I'll have to come home and talk to the mom of a soldier that was killed in action. It's more scary for me to think about that if this soldier was killed from friendly fire. So you don't always fire back when people are shooting at you. Sometimes, yes, sometimes you need to say, you need to ceasefire and make sure that you're not hurting anyone. So this rule also that if someone is shooting at you, shoot back. That's also not a good rule. It doesn't always work. By the way, sometimes you should shoot even if they're not shooting at you. For instance, you're on a mission, a reconnaissance mission, and you see that the terrorist is about to shoot at another force that doesn't spot the terrorist or at a civilian. Your life is not a threat, but I would definitely argue that the rules should be you should be allowed to shoot. Now, what if this person is throwing a cocktail Molotov bottle? It's not so simple now for the soldier on the ground to decide, well, I'm not sure if it's a cocktail Molotov bottle because it's nighttime and I'm 100 yards away. So I see that he's throwing something. If it's a cocktail Molotov bottle and it hits the car, then you might have 4 innocent civilians dead. If you just throw a rock, then maybe the car will detour and you'll have people who were killed and maybe it will just hurt the car. What am I supposed to do? And at that point of time, you don't have a general on the ground starting to explain the whole concept and theories. You have about a split second to react. And that makes it complicated. I want to finish with a very short story. I used to tell this story to college students in the States when they used to ask me, well, why don't you shoot the terrorist in the hand or in the gun or whatever you saw in a different Tom Cruise movie?
His finger.
Yeah, just shoot him in the hand.
In his finger.
I would give them this scenario. I would tell them, and I'm just going to tell the story. I'm not going to do the whole scenario with you. I would tell them, imagine that you're a soldier right now, and you have your helmet and your gear, and it's cold outside, but you're sweating because you've been walking so much, and you're trying to find a terrorist. But then a door opens, and you see a 10-year-old kid holding a PK-47 aiming at you. Do you shoot or do you not shoot? College students, they didn't shoot. For the first time, I would say, okay, but this is a scenario, so we can do it several times. Take a look to your right, take a look to your left. Your friends are dead, and so are you. Well, let's do it again. You go into a village, a door opens, you see a 10-year-old kid holding a gun, aiming at you. Do you shoot or do you not shoot? Some of the kids raised their hands. I said, okay, you're dead, your friend next to you is dead. Let's do it another time. The third time, they all shouted, shoot him, shoot him. I said, okay, you shot the kid. You go over to him, you pick up the gun. It's not loaded. The kid doesn't even know what he's holding.
It's a toy.
He's a 10-year-old, or he's a toy. He's a 10-year-old kid. Maybe his uncle's a terrorist. He doesn't know what he's holding. You're being placed in an impossible situation. The thing is that the night before, there was a 10-year-old kid who killed your friend and shot him. Now, I have nephews. I don't let them play with guns. I let them play with, I don't know, Smurfs or whatever. My question is, why is there a 10-year-old kid holding a PK-47? I have three options here. One is that me and my comrades are all dead now. The second is that I just killed an innocent 10-year-old kid. And the third is that the kid killed an innocent 10-year-old kid. That is the problem with rules of engagement and how complicated it is for the soldier on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you.